there. Welcome to this episode of Author Success Show. The special guest we have today is Robbie Samuels. Robbie is a professional speaker, a business growth strategy coach, a virtual event design consultant, an executive Zoom producer, MC, podcast host, author, a virtual presentation skills trainer, and I'm likely leaving something out. He's been recognized as a networking expert by Harvard Business Review, Forbes, and Inc. As a virtual event design consultant, he assists organizations with bringing their events strategically online with less stress and greater participant engagement. And as a business growth strategy coach, he helps his clients discover likely prospects who already know, like, and trust them, so they stop struggling to launch their offer. And in today's episode, we are going to find out from Robbie his secret book launch team creation strategy, and also how he manages to get more than 100 reviews within a couple of weeks of launching his book every single time. Robbie is also going to tell us the different income streams that he has created as a result of becoming an author, and also how he landed his TEDx opportunity. Hey, Robbie, welcome to Author Success Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's such a pleasure to speak to you, Robbie. I think we've known each other for 4 years from the time you wrote your first book. And, with you, it's very different because most clients come to us because they want to learn a lot from me. But whenever I get to talk to you, I end up learning a lot more. So it's such a pleasure to have you in our podcast.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for all your help. I mean, the first book, I reached a point where I was like, I don't want to actually learn anything new. Oh, look, someone else can do all this promotions for me. I was so grateful. And I was glad to have your team on board again for the second book.
Our pleasure. So tell me, how did the first book happen? Did you always wanted to be an author, or something else motivated you along the way?
Well, I had been speaking professionally for a number of years prior to the book coming out. And knew that having a book was sort of a necessary, I don't know, like calling card or business card in the world of speaking, and that I needed to sort of claim my thought leadership, my IP, stake a claim on what I knew in the space. So writing a book seemed like a natural and kind of necessary next step, but writing didn't come naturally to me. I'm better at it now, I will say. I can't give myself as much grief, but at the time it was really hard for me to get the ideas out of my head. So I did a number of things. I ran a series of master classes, and I posted questions on Facebook, and I gathered material in lots of sort of, I don't know, unique ways, and ultimately was able to turn that into my book. And you and I met through a program that really helped me sort of focus. My attempts to do it on my own, I didn't get as much traction. But then there was a moment when the book was very clearly going to happen. I was probably a month away from it going to the editor when I suddenly realized, the day I'm counting down to, the day I'm going to publish this, is not actually the end. It's the beginning. And I postponed that date for 6 weeks and built a launch team. So that was, I didn't have a launch in mind because the book didn't exist. But when the book suddenly was real, I wanted to make sure people actually read it.
So we'll talk about the launch team in a minute, because that's what you're really known for.
Yeah.
But before that, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit and ask about your process of writing, because most authors feel that they already know everything and it's in their head, and they really struggle to bring that onto the computer.
Sure.
But you said that you actually did these master classes and gathered content for your book, which is such a unique way, because now you are literally asking the readers what they want. Right. So how did that process happen?
Well, what you just said fits really well into the content of my second book, which is about building an audience before you try to sell an offer. And it's true that the content for my first book and my second book were really co-created in a lot of ways. I had been doing so many trainings and talks by that point. I knew what people needed. I had so much material in my head. I mean, 40 hours, I could probably talk nonstop, but I didn't know how to get it written down, and I didn't know what shape to take it. So I worked on an outline. I figured out a general outline for what I want to do. And then and this is actually even more so for my second book. I'm now realizing the master classes really pertain to the second book. The first book, I guess I had a lot of material. Oh, you know what? I had a lot of blog posts. That's what it was. I had written I had sort of committed to writing a weekly blog post for like 1 quarter. And I ended up with 12 blog posts. And by the time you get to 12, you realize you can do this. Like the first
like
one I
12
wrote,
chapters almost, right?
I mean, it was like it was the first blog post I wrote. I sweated I sweated it so much. Like I asked for feedback from like 9 people. And when I finally hit publish, I said to my mentor, "What do I do now?" She said, "Write another one." So to go from that to, you know what, I'm just going to write something every week. And they're short, you know, but they are the beginning of something. They're like 500 words. They're the beginning of a concept. And so at that point, you really have to figure out, well, is there a story to attach to this? Is there an exercise? Is like, what's the thing that gets people like really into the material? So I kept writing these blog posts and sharing them as podcast episodes. So they were actually almost short podcast episodes before they were blog posts in a way. But that material really did help me. And then the other thing I did was I posed questions on several Facebook groups asking what was their number one challenge on this topic. The topic happened to be networking. And at the time it was at events. And what we meant by that was in person. At the time, we didn't have to say that. We just said events. So I was asking people their challenge around networking at events. And when people would write a comment on the post, I would respond in the comment with sometimes hundreds of words. I mean, like full on paragraphs.
Like a real conversation, right?
Real conversation. And it helped keep that thread bouncing up. So people kept commenting on it. In some groups, it was obviously way more engaged than ones where if I wasn't an active member in a group, I got very little traction, but some, it was this thread that like continued for weeks and weeks. I then copied and pasted all the questions and all my answers into a Google Doc. And that also helped me understand like, what did people need help with? And it gave me a chance to answer. Like all the times I was writing answers, it didn't feel like I was writing a book. Like I had no problem writing these lengthy 400-word responses. And it was nice to be able to sometimes write the same kind of response, but to write it fresh from my head, not copy paste, meant again that I was clarifying it even as I wrote it. I was streamlining. I was thinking of new examples. And that all really did trick me into having enough shape that I knew I could move forward with it. My second book, I outlined, and then I did 2 master classes for each half, where I literally just got on and talked my way through the book using the outline as my like framework. And I just paused and saw if there was any questions, clarifying points, and that content, again, it just helped me have a transcript. It helped me hear what people wanted to know more about. So, and one of the concepts I talked about, people really resonated with. I ended up doing a separate masterclass on just that concept and developed a whole, formula, or so it all kind of like flowed from doing those different things.
Wow, this is such good stuff, Robbie. The 2 takeaways I got from what you said is, firstly, everybody already has some pre-existing content which we really don't value. It could be in the form of blogs, masterclasses, webinars, podcasts. It's already there. It's just that we don't realize that we can repurpose it. That's one thing that I would get from what you said. And the other thing is, a lot of first-time authors feel that, hey, I don't have an audience. Whom do I go and ask if this topic is good or if this outline is good? But you went ahead and asked people in other Facebook groups, and they were more than happy to help because you had such a genuine request. So we don't have to start off with a huge audience, right?
You also reminded me that I was hired to lead a webinar on my topic. And when I talk in person, I don't use slides. I'm very free flowing. I usually have like 2 hours and I can just keep going. I have a lot of stories, but I knew that if I was doing this online, that, there'd be slides, which I didn't use a lot. So I wanted to be very careful about how much time I spent on each slide and what content I shared. And it was 45 minutes, right? Not free flowing. So I actually scripted that, and the effort to, write out under each of these slides, like what I want to talk about, also was whole sections of the book being written. And I was being paid. I remember the time thinking this is hysterical. I'm being paid right now to develop the content that will ultimately be my book. But so there are a lot of creative ways to get the content out of our heads. And now Zoom has the transcription feature built in to even the free version of Zoom. So it used to be you had to record yourself and then, bring it to a third party and get it transcribed. Not the case anymore. You can just turn on Zoom, hit enable transcription, and have it right away.
Wow, I didn't know that. I'm going to try for this interview.
I have a video series on YouTube where I talk about all things Zoom, as you know, and that's one of the resources that I talk about. I'll share the link with you so you can share it in the show notes.
Perfect. So, Robert, you said that you intentionally postponed the launch of your first book, Croissants versus Bagels, right? And that helped you to really build your launch team. And I'm asking this because a lot of authors struggle with this. I tell them that, hey, we can do the bestseller launch for you, but just make sure you have 10 reviews within the first week. And people literally struggle to get those 10 reviews. Though they have hundreds and thousands of friends and followers, it is a challenge. So how did you crack that formula?
Ask and ask again. Okay, the first thing I think we need to know about launching something, particularly like a book or a podcast, is that it's always more important to us than anyone else. Like it's our thing. And so we need to make the request clear and simple. So if, people want to help us. Like, I mean, I think you have to kind of shift your mindset around that, because if someone asked you to do something and they made it clear and simple, you would want to help them. Yeah. I think what's difficult about launches is, and I've been on dozens. I have at least 50 reviews now on Amazon. I think it's now closer to 60 reviews that I've done in the last few years that you and I have known each other, because I'm always saying yes to authors. Most authors ask me once and that's it. And then I write it down on my to-do list. And then that to-do list gets, transferred over multiple days and multiple weeks until all I have is like this little keyword. And I'm trying to remember whose book was it? What was the due date? What was the book about? Like, I'm just racking my brain. So it ends up becoming an annoyance and inconvenient and making me feel bad that I didn't follow through on what I said I would do.
Right.
So I think that when people say yes to helping us, they're setting an intention, and it's our job to make it as easy as possible for them to follow through on their intentions, because when they do, they're going to feel great and we're going to feel great. Right. Absolutely. So I think that too often people who are asking for reviews like really hesitate to follow up, don't want to like bother people. But what you're doing is you're putting the burden on the other people to keep track of this request that is really it's your request. Yeah. They shouldn't be the ones holding that. They should be nurtured into following through. So that's like the mindset that I take, is that I'm inviting, and I also actually really believe, and this is the relationship piece I teach, right? I believe by asking for favors and giving favors and things like that, that is strengthening relationships. And that's a way to start and connect relationships. So I basically, while I was writing all those posts, asking for people to give me feedback about their number one challenge, I realized that I had these like really active threads that were all filled with people who were clearly engaging with the material. So I set up a landing page so I could collect, email addresses for people who were signing up for my launch team. Because one of the other mistakes I've seen is that you ask people to just tell you, and then you've got to run all around the internet, keeping track. And that's just a nightmare. So I had a landing page, but then I did one step further, which is the landing page. When you sign up through the landing page, you're directed to a Google form, and the Google form, and you're told this is going to happen on the landing page, but the Google form collects information that I think will be helpful as a launch team member for me to know about you. And I've had a very high, like 80-90% of people will fill out the Google form. And it's just so great because it'll automatically get them on a spreadsheet, and then I only have to copy and paste the names of the people who didn't do it, right? So that already makes my life simpler. But that was what I did. I went back and I basically said to people, hey, the book's going to be coming out in a little bit. Like, I'd love your support. It seems like you're really into the content. I want to give you access to an early copy. Thank you again so much for everything you're doing. You're bringing stuff to the world, blah, blah. So, and then I really followed through, and I had for that first book, the one thing I major changed between two books is the first book published on a Monday night, and the following Sunday was the launch date. The amount of time and effort to get all the reviews up was a lot, because I had people send me the reviews in advance. And another improvement from the first book to the second is that I now collect reviews through a Google form. The first time I had them emailing the reviews to me, and then I was forwarding them to an assistant who was copying them into a spreadsheet, which really makes no sense. Clearly, I knew about Google Forms. So I think it was like simplify the process for me by having a landing page, having that initial Google form, having the Google form for reviews. I knew my first and second book that I had 100 reviews like sent to me way in advance. Then
Yeah,
it was
I
about
want to
getting them
just
online.
ask about this for a second, Robbie. Usually authors, they do have launch team requests and forms and things like that, but then they just remind their friends to leave a review on Amazon, but you ask them to send it to you. What's the reason behind that?
I think that people aren't used to writing reviews. It's not a thing. It's a small percentage of the population regularly writes reviews on Amazon for anything.
Yeah.
So this is not a natural thing. This is not a thing people do all the time. And I think there's two parts to the review process, and both parts make people anxious. One, writing. They have to write something. What am I going to write? So I give people 4 prompts, and I say, here are 4 questions or 4 prompts. If you answer any of these, like any or all of these, this will be a great review. And you need 2 or 3 sentences will be fine. Longer is fine. Doesn't need to be like a book report. So that's one email. And as soon as they send, and I say, and when you got your review, send it to me. Now, I'm not editing. I'm not like changing them. Now I will fix people if like my last name is Samuels and the possessive, exclamation, the apostrophe goes after the S, right? So like if they like make mistakes like that, I'll fix that. But really it's just like, it's about getting that from them. And then when it's time, which for my first book, it was all about waiting for that last week. This time I published it 3 weeks ahead of my launch date, maybe even more.
Yeah.
Maybe
Could
like
you
maybe
also
more than 3
explain
weeks.
the difference between the date of publication and the launch date?
It's such a big thing, right? So I think every writer out there thinks that the day they publish is it. Nobody knows or cares. Like literally no one's going to find your book when you hit publish, unless you tell them.
Yeah.
And so the launch date is the date you build up to for a public announcement. And in between the publish date and the launch date is your soft launch or your pre-launch. That's the time period where you're directing your launch team members to go check out the book. And that's when my process is 99 cents for Kindle. What I did this time was I had 99 cents for like weeks. So I only used 2 free days this time, and it was only for the Sunday, the launch day, and Monday, the second day. Right. Otherwise, it was really like 99 cents, which also meant I had a really long tail this time of sales over weeks before there was a surge in sales, which really I think helped my ranking.
Yeah.
Because I got the same number of reviews first time and second time, but this first time my ranking was not nearly as high in Amazon as it was the second time. It was great, but I did so much better the second time. So
yeah, that's
first time was
probably
17.
because there was just a week's gap between the 2 dates in the first
Exactly.
for the first
It was a
book,
week
but now
gap.
we had more than 3 weeks.
Well, not only was it a week's gap, but in that week, it was free multiple days. Right. Where this time it was like weeks of sort of steady sales. So what would happen this time is you would join my launch team, and I would say, send this email, and then you would send me the review in the Google form. And then as soon as the book was published, I would then send it back. And then I include the steps for how to actually post it on Amazon. Right. Here, go here, look down here. Here's these steps. Don't forget to write a title. It could be anything. Great book. Don't stress. Hit submit. You're golden. And I would say, let me know if you post under a name that I wouldn't recognize. Let me know if you're posting in a country that's not .com, like a site code. So I could track them. And the secret sauce behind all of this, because I had over 500 people on my launch team, is something called YAM, yet another mail merge, which integrates Google Drive with Gmail. And I was able to send these hyper personalized, meaning it was emailed to you with your, in the body of it would be your review text. And when you post, whenever you take an action, I stop bothering you about it. That's the other thing I really have to say about how people do launches. They rely on email lists, like email, like I don't know, like MailChimp. They rely on like a MailChimp. MailChimp does not go to the primary tab on Gmail, so people aren't necessarily seeing it. It doesn't feel personalized the way a message from me to you is. And yet another mail merge sidesteps that by it really is a message from me to you. It goes from my inbox to your inbox and goes right to your primary.
Yeah.
There's no messaging that says like MailChimp, or there's no logo. There's no address at the bottom. There's no unsubscribe link. I'm just able to scale the experience, but it's still a message from me to you. The other thing I've seen people do that I don't quite get is they make Facebook groups. And Facebook groups are really hard to get people to see the actual content of a Facebook group, because you have to be active in the group for it to send you notifications. So people put a lot of effort into building a Facebook group that no one sees. And they're like stuffing content into it, and they're trying to tag people. Honestly, email and text and Facebook PM for me would be like the top methods for reaching people. I would start with email, as personal as possible, follow with a Facebook PM saying, hey, I sent you something, you know, and if you have their text, like text them too, like it would be an option. But assume people want to do it. And there's always, for some reason, some small percentage. I have still like 3 people who wrote a review in advance and didn't post it yet. I really don't understand those people.
Yeah.
You're like,
they've gone on a holiday or something.
You've already done the hard part. So
so how
I
many people
also
actually signed up into the launch team, and how many reviews actually have come in so far?
So a little over 500 this time, and 330 the first time. And the first time my goal was 100 reviews by my launch day. And I did achieve that in a week, which again, I had the reviews. It was about getting them online. It was a lot of work. And I heard that Amazon got a little stricter about how quickly reviews come in. So that was the other reason to elongate the pre-launch time period. And then I had 150 reviews within a week the first time, and pretty much the same thing this time. I think I'm at 159 now, and I'm at 190 for the first book. Right. So I had this time 550, and then so 159 have come in. The thing is that a lot of people who don't know me signed up this time. A friend of mine shared it with his community, and 150 people signed up for my launch team. So I have had a fair number of those people get very involved, but there's probably, 120 who like aren't going to do anything.
Yeah, and I think having a 30% review rate is pretty good for a launch team.
That's kind of my aim. I really think that 30% is a realistic number to aim for. And that, so if you want to have 50 reviews, you got to have 150 people on your launch team. If you want to have 20, you got to have 60. And also the friends and family thing. I got on a call with 3 close friends yesterday. These are people I've known for, 14 years. 2 of them are entrepreneurs. They have their own small little things, nothing big. That none of them, like 2 of them, 2 of them knew I had a book out, but they hadn't gotten it. One had signed up for my launch team. One didn't even know I had a new book out. So do not rely on your closest friends and your family members, because the people I've seen respond quickest are the people who've gotten value out of working with you, seen you speak, watched the video, got a chance to see the advanced copy somehow. Like those are the people who are going to be like, wow, I really want to support this person because I could really value this.
So friends and family may love you, but they may not be the best launch team members.
Are they your ideal readers? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Exactly. True. So tell me, for somebody who has never heard about all this launch team and stuff, why do people actually take the effort of reading your book and leaving a review? It is a lot of work. So what's in it for them?
Well, so I frame this, you have to be very careful about how you frame this, because you can't give something of value to someone in exchange for a review. Amazon rules, right? Now, you can give them an advanced copy. That's still allowed from what I still know. But I am giving people value for joining my launch team. I am not tying it to them writing a review. So there's a distinction there. So every launch team member received the advanced copy on October 5th. October 12th, they were invited to attend a librarian-led book club discussion, which was a new thing we did for this launch. My coach is a trained librarian. So that was purposeful. We wanted to give people a week to get into the book, because we also know people who download the advanced copy, which I did through Book Funnel this time, which was so helpful. It was just a really simple process, I have to say. So we gave them a week to get into the content and said, if you hadn't opened the book yet, just still come to this book club. And we had we had like 60 people come to this book club, and we opened the mic and invited people to come up and answer questions. We had all these prompts. So that was really fun and engaging. And then we also promised them that they would be invited. I'm trying to think of all the things. They were being invited to this free training, which honestly, everybody was invited to this 3-day free training because it led to an offer. They were invited to the virtual launch party. Again, everybody was invited to that. But they were also, this is a really big thing now, is I'm doing a launch party debrief masterclass. So I'm doing not a launch party, but a book launch debrief masterclass. So only people on my launch team are being invited to that. So that is, again, I'm not saying only if you wrote a review. I'm like, if you're on my launch team, you can come. And I'm hoping that people who hadn't yet written a review might be reminded to write a review when I send that message out this week. So that was, people were amazed by what I had done, and they wanted to know more about it. A lot of them are authors or thinking about being authors. So giving people a little insight to your own process is valuable, but it's not like proprietary to me. I'm happy to share it. Go for it. It helps people. It helps people. So why do they do it? Because I said that you're going to do it for a couple of reasons. One is you would find this content valuable, and you think that it might apply to the business, your own business. Because my second book is about launching, launching products and services, small list, big results. And so the second reason is you value the way I put content out into the world, and the way I'm always being abundant and sharing. And so you want to support that. And the third was that you're like, wow, Robbie really knows what he's doing with launches, and I want to go to that debrief. And maybe it's some combination of these three reasons, but this is why you might say yes. And I actually had that in my messaging to my own email list to see if I can convert people, because I didn't send the launch details specific follow-up to people who didn't specifically sign up for it. So I have a weekly email list, but not everyone on that weekly email signed up. So I was very careful to not, cross over those.
Yeah, I'm sure that's tons of value, and that's why so many people signed up. So Robbie, in your second book, in Small List, Big Results, a lot of people, they write their first book and they never end up writing their second. So how did you realize that it's been 4 years and now it's time to write your second book? What was that like a wake-up call for you?
So the second book was actually 20,000 words was written in 2018. So my first book came out in 2017.
Yeah.
And I started a coaching program, which I wrote about in the second book. I stumbled my way through piloting and then iterating a group coaching program. And I realized just from doing that there was some content that I kept repeating, like every client, every new program, every cohort, every individual coaching client. So that's when I ran that series of masterclasses on all this different content. And I started writing it, but I paused the project at about 20,000 words. It didn't feel like it didn't feel long enough. It didn't feel complete. It didn't feel like a book. It felt like there was details missing, stories missing. And more importantly than any of this, I didn't have a next step offer figured out. Right. And I had already done that once with my first book, where I was like going to stumble my way through. And I was like, no. This time, when this book goes out in the world, I'm going to have a real plan for what comes next. And so I put it on pause. And then I went about my life, and I went and coached dozens of entrepreneurs. And it got so much clarity about what people need, came up with new processes, systems, stories, right? Like anecdotes, all this stuff. And so then, separate from all of that coaching, I have this business teaching networking. Well, it's networking at conferences. Well, conferences go away in March 2020. I managed to reinvent myself in 2020 so that 8 months later, I had this like totally different business, 6 figures, thriving company, going into 2021, keeps thriving, more money than I ever made in my life, went and bought a house, good stuff is happening. And everyone's like, how did you do that? And so the second book became important again, because it was an answer to the question, Robbie, how did you do that? But even more importantly, it was how you, the reader, can do this. Like I follow the best practices that I have as a business strategy coach. I treated myself like a client. And that's why I was able to make that shift and witness that there were people coming to me. How did I serve them? Essentially do research calls, all the things in the book, and then create new offers and pilot them. So I needed to like get it back out into the world. And I know people are still, even though it's almost 2 years later, I know people are still trying to figure out how to write the ship that happened to them. So, and I love coaching and I love groups. So I was like, okay, now I know I want there to be a program. So I developed this year-long program, again, not fully formed because I needed to hear feedback from everyone in the process. And the 3-day training after my launch led to this offer, which was a 5-figure offer. And I had some people sign up and it's happening. And now I'm creating new offers from this that are going to be, 4-figure offers and like less expensive offers and not year long. And it's just now it's an iterative process to see what people need and how I can best serve them. And I also know the best way to sell your first book is to have a second book. Someone told me that a long time ago. So I always had it in my mind. Yeah. I always called my first book. That's the other thing mentally. I always said my first book. And now I don't say my second book. I say my latest book because I'm going to leave the door open, like this is not my second book. It's my latest book because that means there are other books to come. My first book means other books to come. My latest book, there are other books to come. As a person who's not a writer.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. So Robbie, you were talking about the 5-figure offer and everything else that has happened at the back end of the book. Now, this is something you need to share with us because a lot of clients, when I speak to them, they would ask me questions like, how many books do I need to sell to get the ROI from the book project? So what do you have to tell these authors who think probably they are just ignorant of the fact that you could make money through the book in so many other ways than just selling the books?
It's just so funny. I went back, by the way, and did the numbers. My first book has hit 10,000 copies, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Not all paid, mind you, because so many of them through your efforts, actually, 2,500, I think, were free copies. And then another like 8,000 were paid copies, either ebook or paperback. And I'm pretty darn proud of that because I know that 10,000 is like a reputable number. It's such a small number in some ways, but it's such a reputable number. I'm not getting rich on that. I'm not making money off that. Right. So I knew that it's really like I decided to write the second book and create the program all in the same like moment. I was struggling in June, July. I was moving. I moved states here in the United States, and I was looking for to buy a home. So there's a lot of moving happening over the summer. I just kept feeling like I needed to be doing more, and then I'd be like, hit the gas and hit the brake, hit the gas and the brake. And then in July, I like had this sort of clarifying moment about how I could roll out this content that included the book, but I also did these pop-up masterminds. I took one of the major concepts from my second book is called Wake Up Your Network. And it's a whole step-by-step process for like identifying and discovering likely prospects from within your existing network who already know, like, and trust you. So I set up these 2-hour pop-up masterminds, $100, just, to get people to test the content. And I started releasing those dates. Those dates were late September. So early September, the book, by the way, was still the editor when I announced that. The book was still the editor when I was working on my launch team. The book was still the editor when I was testing out my cover and my title with my community. And that all changed, by the way. Like my title changed, my subtitle changed, my cover changed, because I'm not my ideal reader. So all the things that I liked didn't make sense once I put it in front of my ideal readers. So I had this sort of like 6-month or really more like a 4-month process sort of mapped out in my head from September through November. So I guess it's really 3 months in a way. Like writing the book was August, to finish the book in August. Now, to tell you the truth, my wife wasn't even sure I was going to pull this off because in August, I still had a lot of writing to do. We moved again in August. It was just a lot going on. But I announced dates. I said October 31st, the book is that's the launch date. Like I just put a line down, I declared it, and then I worked backwards to make it happen. So I knew that I had to lead people through an experience. In the book, I talk about little P problems versus big P problems. Little P problems are the problems that people themselves, your clients, your prospects, think they have. I can't call them symptoms because in their mind, they are problems, but really they're symptoms. And so I had to bring them in with, say, attract them around solving this little P problem. But I needed to then bring their awareness to the bigger problem, Because if I don't do that, if I only solve the little p problem, they don't think they need my help. I need them to understand how this is all fitting. And so the book title is Small List, Big Results, Launch a Successful Offer No Matter the Size Your Email List. It doesn't mention networking. Networking is a solution. It's not the thing people are looking for. What is the problem they think they have? They don't think they're selling enough because they don't think of a big list. Right. So I bring them in around that. I get them to interact with the content through a pop-up mastermind, through the book launch, through the librarian-led book club discussion, with all these different opportunities to interact and engage the material. And by the way, the people who do this find it incredibly valuable. So you got to write a good book. That's the first part, before everything else. So then I led them to this 3-day, 2 hours a day training, and it was free. And it, again, like concepts from the book, first day is really kind of like you're solving the wrong problem and is explaining these things. The second day was taking them through how to actually take the action that's in the book, step by step, send them to breakout rooms. So I talk to each other about these things. Third day, I had 3 prior clients come and share. I interviewed them about their experience working with me, what results they got, how they got through this mentally, what was holding them back. And then I made this offer. Now the offer was way more money than people were probably expecting.
Yeah.
But I know it's the offer that I know that what I've developed is what people need to fully get to the experience that they're looking for, the outcome. And I'm not going to undersell. So I put it out there and I got 2 people signed up. Now, 70 people attended or watched the replay. 2 out of 70 is 3%. 2% would be a standard conversion rate. So I'm happy. 30-ish people on average, 35 people attended the 3 days live. 3 out of 35, huge percentage. So I don't have a big list. If all the people who signed up had come, I would have had double. But again, not everyone signs up for free thing shows. So I work with that. And now I'm in the process of figuring out, okay, now that I've done that, how do I now create maybe a 12-week offer that will get people to product market fit, figuring out what is their irresistible offer. Maybe there's a 1-day offer for people who are already selling. So now I have this pipeline. Now I have this community of people. The offer I made for them wasn't the right fit for different reasons. Now I can engage with them, do these research calls, which is in the book, right? So I think the problem with most people writing a book is that they think the book is the product. The book is not the product. The book is the medium where you share a message that helps people become aware that they need your help. So my book, by the way, gives you all the details you need, because if you can do this on your own, you're not my ideal client. But if you read the book and you're like, wow, Robbie's right. Boy, I don't know if I can do this on my own. That's my ideal client.
Perfect. So the next time somebody asks me this question, I'm not going to answer. I'm just going to share this episode with them.
Yes. I mean, I think that I would even say delay publishing a book until you figured out where it's leading. Like, don't get ego wrapped in it. Like, make the book meaning something to your business. Now, if you're speaking, like my first book, the book really was to get me on stages. So I published it with that in mind more than even a coaching program. So I think it was fine. I didn't have everything figured out, but I knew I wanted to do some sort of coaching program. So I kind of felt my way through that. I didn't know my audience. I didn't know my ideal client at the time. And by the way, it gets so much easier to write when you know who you're writing for.
Yeah,
like so much easier. I think that's why I don't struggle with writing my weekly emails anymore. I don't struggle with writing this book because I know with such clarity who I'm serving. And I didn't have that clarity 4 years ago.
Sure. So you said that for the first book, your main goal was to get on stages, and you did have a TEDx opportunity. So how did that feel? How did you get that big opportunity?
Well, TEDx is a little bit of effort. I mean, first you decide that you are worthy to try.
And the book definitely gives you the confidence that you are worthy.
It does. So I read this book, and I have this amazing mentor, coach, Dory Clark, and I've known her for a dozen plus years. And I ended up working with her one-on-one in 2019. And she pushes me to write for HBR, Harvard Business Review, and to do a TEDx, neither of which was on my radar or any immediate radar. And but she was like, no, these are the social proof things you need to do. And I was like, okay, I hired you to give me a strategy. And so we start working on that. And with her help, I like crafted my, this is what my talk's going to be about. And the thing is, I had this concept in my first book is called Croissants versus Bagels, Strategic, Effective, and Inclusive Networking at Conferences. And everyone always wants to know, like, what is this thing about baked goods? So the bagels are the tight clusters, those shoulder to shoulder huddles when you walk in a room and everyone's sort of standing in these little tight little groups, impossible to break into them. Yeah. And a croissant is when one person shifts their body language in the space and makes room for others to join. And it's really about setting an intention, like you're there to meet people, make your body language match that, so you're approachable. And when you're looking to meet people, look for people who are more approachable. And so, she really encouraged me to do a TEDx on that talk, on that topic. And so with that encouragement, you just start filling out forms. And the thing about TEDx, like the first 6 applications, they're all different. I had to keep creating new content, like a 1-minute video, 2-minute video, answer these questions, answer these other questions. I need 2 paragraphs, 1 paragraph. But after about 6, I had this like library of content, and whatever they asked me, I was able to like more easily. So I went in, my friend had done 13 applications before being chosen, and I thought he's brilliant. So I was like, you know what, mentally, I'm going to prepare for 20, because, if it took him 13, like, okay, this might be a long slog. And so I think that's the other thing, is like being aware of the fact that you might feel very precious about which ones you choose at first, but in the end, you just kind of pick whatever ones that will make sense to you. In the end, I got chosen by one that was in my backyard. So that really helped the time. I didn't have to worry about travel and all of that. But I do think it's worth doing. And I'm really glad I did it, because, it was filmed at the end of 2019. It came out in January of 2020. And by March, we weren't talking about in-person body language. So and 6 feet away would have been a better topic than how to include people.
Right. I'm so happy, Robbie, for all the things that you've accomplished through your 2 books and all the great things you're doing to serve your audience. So where can people find out more about you?
Well, I've actually created a special landing page just for you and your listeners.
Wow.
It's robbiesamuels.com/HSP. And that is, you have access to my second book, but even more importantly, perhaps, is you get access, whether you buy the book or not, to the free bonus Big Results Toolkit. And there are several workbooks and worksheets in there. There's a Wake Up Your Network workbook and a Analyze the Problem Language workbook. And there's worksheets about how to manage time, reading lists. There's a replay to the one I mentioned earlier, Discover Your Ideal Client, was a masterclass I did in 2018. People really, still to this day, I'm referring people to it. So that's in there. And so that's the other thing, is when you're creating a book, how do you create bonus material that really attracts people to your email list? And as people who are self-publishing or independently publishing, this is something we have control over, whereas people who are traditionally publishing they don't have access to doing this. And so we really want to be thinking about, what do we put in? What do we create? And for me, it made sense to give people materials that really support them in implementing the strategies in the book. The book helps bring those ideas to life, but the workbooks really help them like take it and do themselves. Particularly if people get the ebook. It's the kind of book people tell me they were waiting. I didn't put the paperback out for a long time. It felt like a long time. I actually started a petition. I started a petition to bring the paperback, to publish the paperback, and I set up a Google form and I asked people if they were waiting for hey, Robbie has a date that he's planning to do this, but he's thinking about doing it sooner based on, feedback. Are you waiting on the paperback? Are you waiting on the audiobook? And I had people answer. And so it became really clear that a lot of people wanted the paperback. Yeah. So I released it on the last day of my 3-day training as a paperback. And that helps get sort of immediate attention to it. So yeah, I think that's a place. RobbieSamuels.com generally is how to find me. NoMoreBadZoom.com is where I am every Friday at 5 Eastern. For anyone that's not in the middle of the night for you. So yeah, that's my virtual happy hour. I hope people can check out.
Thanks, Robbie, for being such a giver and sharing all these amazing resources. I'm going to have all the links right below in the show notes. Thank you once again for coming on Auto Success Show.
My pleasure. Good luck, everybody.